Shalom, shalom. First off, I give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahushai, Ba'ashem HaKakadash. Yahweh being the true name for the Father, Yahweh Shai being the name for his only begotten Son, who the world eagerly calls God, and Jesus Christ. Only give double honors to our apostles, double honors to our elders, a great millstone, that touches truth and will well, and citation, hopefully that pushes truth and honesty, sincerity. This is Brother Yahweh coaching love into the spirit power of Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushai. And I want to start with this precept. This is 1 Corinthians 7:7. It says, "For I would that all men were even as myself, but every man hath his proper gift of Yahweh, one after this manner, and another after that." All right, and want to bring this precept out, man. Just meditate on a few things. You know, it's important to know that, you know, not every brother is going to have the same walk that you have in this truth, the same benefits, the same liberties, and the same freedoms that you might have. They may not have the same health that you got, you know, and they may not have the same wealth that you have. Okay, you know, you have to keep in mind that we're all working out our own salvation, and we're all catching hell in our own way. You know, some brother might have more of something than another brother that might have, you know, as far as access to certain things, to be able to do certain things. You know, every brother has their own struggles that they have to go through. You know, some brothers are in this truth and they're married, and there's other brothers that are in this truth that, you know, they're not, they don't have wives. And the scriptures talk about, we bring at camp, you know, those that have wives, you know, be as though they have none. You know, so ultimately you got to put the truth of Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushai first. Okay, but you got to remember your own walk that you're in, and your own difficulties, and maybe sometimes you just have things a little bit better, a lot of liberty to do something that, you know, not every brother has. You know, so we do what we can as the body collectively, you know, where brothers might be lacking in certain areas, to try to see what we can do to balance that out, you know, to help brothers. You know, but every man must do what he can, you know, to help himself get out of certain situations as well. You know, but don't get so caught up in what you have to do, what you have to accomplish in your own plans, that you forget other brothers. And you never want to make assumptions, you know, on another brother's walk. If he's not as eloquent as you are, maybe he's not as proficient in the Hebrew, but he doesn't need to grow to get in that. You know, you can help that brother get there. You know, but you don't want to make an assumption, you know, that a brother is not your brother, or a brother's living his life a certain way, and find yourself, you know, bearing false witness because things don't line up the way things are lining up in your own personal life. Okay, we all have our proper gifts. You know, some brother might just have the gift, but he just might be real fit, man, and on this side, you know, it might be real fit, you know, you got the height and everything, and you got another brother, man, that's maybe his weight is not there, you know, he's got to catch up, where he might have a lot of physical disabilities. You know, you don't want to look down on other brothers or you know, judge them a certain way, you know, that they're living their life wickedly, or, you know, they're not doing this, not doing that, if they're not able to do the exact same things that you're able to do in this truth. We all wounded in this damn thing, man, in this hell and Babylon the Great. You know, and it's important that we maintain that understanding and be there to lift one another up, and not get too, you know, frustrated with brothers. You know, have patience when brothers is trying, you know, to do what they can to become a better man of Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushai in this thing. You know, because you don't want brothers that, you know, to get too beat down on the hell that they catch, you know, and then they feel cast away, you know, and they don't feel presence of the body. You know, we're all one body, one flesh in this. Every brother has a certain position in this camp that can be of assistance to the body. You know, so it's important that we remember that, man. And try, if you have a gift, you know, call all Yahweh's Mashah Spirit to see 144 pull up in front of me. If you have a gift, you know, make sure you do what you can to share that gift if it's something that is shareable with the, with the body. You don't want to gatekeep on anything in this truth, because something, or a skill set or advice or wisdom you might have, you might be able to share with another brother, But also we got to remember that, being on this side in Babylon the Great, the hell that we catch, some brothers have permanent wounds that aren't going to be healed until Yahweh Shai returns. And you don't want to throw, salt in the wound if a brother's kind of got something going on for him that's out of his control. You don't want to make that brother feel like, he's a detriment because of that situation he's in, especially if it's something that that's uncontrollable, such as like, what if a brother doesn't have a damn leg, and or he gets he loses a foot or something like that. Maybe he's just got something going on where, you guys are walking and you're trying to survive, and you looking back getting mad at the brother like, damn, man, nigga, you can't fucking pick up the pace. You can't keep up. No, man, you don't look back and look down on that brother, man. Help him out. Do what you can to help him out, and you don't want to judge him on that situation. Well, it's your fault you lost your own foot. You see, you shouldn't have been doing this to lose your foot. We all, fall short in this truth. We all make mistakes. Okay? You don't want to keep beating brother down if the brother's truly sincere and, he's repentant from what he's done. You don't want to beat him down for it, and start looking at him some type of way that he's not taking this truth serious. Just take the time to have patience to examine the whole matter and see before you judge. Okay? This is Luke 14:27. It says, and whosoever doth not bear his cross and come after me cannot be my disciple. So we all have something. Like, you have to remember to not get too depressed over that in this current life, you just can't escape that type of trouble. Like, there's going to be some type of issue in your personal life that you got to go through, that you're just meant to go through that. Okay? So you got to be able to take it on the chin and pick that bag up, and you still got to keep pushing. You still got to go out and labor and do this work no matter what. And this is something that you have to remember as a body, that brothers have other things, crosses that they have to bear. So don't kick that brother, for bearing his cross. See what you can do to help carry it with them. Because a lot of times we can find ourselves getting frustrated at the discomfort of seeing the cross that has to be picked up. Yahweh Shai, when he passed away and he was crucified, he had to carry up his cross by himself up that great mountain. And while they were beating him and whipping him, they had already tortured him to death pretty much. And then they made him carry that heavy ass cross up those jagged rocks up that mountain. And you had one of the brothers that broke down, and he tried to help him. And he was looking at the path to go up the mountain, and he's just like, man, this shit is uncomfortable. He wasn't on trial for crucifixion. He wasn't getting whipped. But he stopped, and they kind of showed you that. You got to get a visual example of this in Passion of the Christ. They came in that movie, when they showed the brutality in detail. They showed that crucifixion, and they showed, the brother that went to help Yahweh Shai. He was getting whipped, and he was falling over constantly trying to carry that heavy ass shit up the mountain. And he stopped and he helped him. You think he was comfortable when helping him with his cross up that mountain? No, but he knew that this is a collective effort, and he didn't like seeing Yahweh Shai suffer like that, and he stepped in, and that's a good example of being brotherly. Okay. But nevertheless, you individually, you still have to be the one to carry your cross. Yahweh Shai had to be the one to carry it. You know, he didn't just put his cross on the other brother, say, you know, and just have him carry it all the way. No, he still fought through to carry that cross all the way up that mountain. So recognize if there's a situation in your life, if it's a cross that you must bear, and you can't try to avoid your way out of it. You know, or sometimes you might be in a position where you're carrying your own cross, and you're so overly concerned with the pain that you feel, you know, from the stress and the injuries you're taking from carrying that cross, as you forget all the other brothers in this truth, they got to carry their cross too. It's not just you, you know. And maybe you're able to carry your cross a certain way where your situation, you feel that maybe you're able to move more flawlessly than other brothers, you know. But you don't know that. You don't know how hard this other brother might be struggling with his cross that he must bear. And it's easy to, you know, let that slide right past you and not notice that. And that's dangerous, and you got to be real careful with that, man. Okay? Because we all have sinned. We all fall short of the glory of Yahweh B'Shem Yahushai. You know, and if a brother isn't, you know, being overly, you know, just straight out blatantly wicked, he's not scoffing, he's scoring, he's not being a nigga in the streets, you know, if he's doing what he can and he's doing the work of Yahweh B'Shem Yahushai, you know, and you see the brother is trying to carry his cross, you know, help him out, man. Don't just make assumptions on the brother, man, that he's just not giving a shit if his cross isn't being held, if he's struggling with it, you know. There's nothing wrong with doing words of encouragement and encouraging the brother, but man, don't kick him down just because you don't want to deal with the issue. But you know, we all got our own crosses to carry, man. We all got things that we got to carry. We all got things that we got to bear. It's a collective suffering effort in this thing, man. You know, this is Romans chapter 2 verse 1. It says, therefore thou art inexcusable, O man, whosoever thou art that judgest. For when thou judgest another, thou condemnest thyself. For thou that judgest doest the same things. But we are sure that the judgment of Yahweh is according to truth against them which commit such things. Right? So you got some men that are actually committing wicked acts, that are actually pretending to be in this truth. You know, pretending to be brotherly, but yet they're very deceptive. Yet they have a betraying spirit. You know, and Yahweh will judge those men that are sincere in their wickedness. But you have some brothers that are not on no bullshit, man. You know, it says, and thinkest thou this, O man, that judgest them which do such things, and doeth the same, that thou shalt escape the judgment of Yahweh? Right. So before you judge someone else, you want to make sure that you're not doing that very action before you want to accuse somebody of doing something. You know, and you don't want to wrongfully judge someone, and you don't want to bear false witness either, because that's against the commandment. You know, but you see a brother falling short, out of love, you correct him, you know, and you guide him and you help keep him to enter to the straight gate. But you don't want to do that, you know, a false accusation, because a brother, you know, isn't bearing the cross the same way you're bearing yours. You know, because we all fall short of the glory, man. You know, especially if you've done the same thing. You know, you can't be telling a brother, you know, you can't do this if you're doing the same thing. But if you're not doing the same thing, and this brother's clearly going off, you know, and he's doing things purposely out of anger, out of spite to come against the body, hey, by all means, hey, he needs to get judged, and he's going to get judged by the whole church. You know, the whole matter is going to be brought before the whole church, and that brother doesn't change at that point, and if he's doing serious offenses, then it's time for him to go. You know, it says, and thinkest thou this, O man, that judgest them which do such things, and doeth the same, that thou shalt escape the judgment of Yahweh? Or despisest thou the riches of his goodness and forbearance and long suffering, not knowing that the goodness of Yahweh leadeth thee to repentance? But after thy hardness and impudent heart treasureth up unto thyself wrath against the day of wrath and revelation of the righteous judgment of Yahweh. Okay? So ultimately, Yahweh Bashem Yahushai is going to come and he's going to give the ultimate judgment. If a nigga's going off and he's being wicked, he's going to be found out, weeded out, and the Lord is going to smite him in that day. And we don't want to get ourselves in a position to where you start getting overly trying to signal somebody out if they're wicked or not. You know, especially if they've been laboring. That's not something you want to do. You know, because we get faced with enemies so much. You know, you don't want to be in a position where you're just looking at everybody as a potential enemy. Ultimately, if you just focus on working out your salvation, if you're at the highways and hedges, you know, the Spirit's going to bear witness. Try the spirits still, filter them out, and the Lord's going to reveal it in due time. There's nothing that we can do in our own hands to try to, you know, guarantee pick somebody out if they're wicked. The Lord going to let it happen, man. It's going to come out. If somebody ain't right, that shit's going to come out. It always does, man. But you don't want to find yourself being paranoid of trying to see, you know, constantly who's your enemy and who's not, and all of a sudden you're making assumptions, you know, on a brother, and that's not the case. You know? Verse 6 says, who will render to every man according to his deeds, right? Yahweh Bashem Yahushai will render to every man according to his deeds. But it's not of us to be concerned, you know, constantly what the deeds of other brothers are, unless it's something obviously that's the Spirit's revealing, hey, this guy is committing Momoism, or he's doing like that shit Alazar is doing, the whole pagan shit. Yeah, that shit got to be brung out before the congregation. You know, it needs to be brought to his face, and two or three witness, every word is going to be established. Hear the whole matter. If brothers is on some serious allegation type shit. You know, but it says, verse 7, to them who by patient continuance and well-doing seek for the glory and honor of immortality, eternal life. So you just continue in patience. By patient continuing, you continue to do the right thing. Verse 8 says, but unto them that are contentious and do not obey the truth, but obey unrighteousness, indignation, and wrath, tribulation and anguish upon every soul of the man that doeth evil, of the Jew first, and also of the Gentile. So judgment's going to come. Nobody's going to escape the judgment of Yahweh Bashem Yahushai. If you live in your life wicked and sin in secret, you're going to be found out and you're going to be pulled out. You know, we've heard it time and time again. Brothers have got kicked out of the camp or whatever because they, you know, on some bullshit. On straight bullshit. Because only the Lord Yahweh Bashem Yahushai knows these spirits. But the Spirit will reveal to us, you know, He gives us the blessing of discernment. But He doesn't give you the blessing of being paranoid to try to discover who is or who isn't. You know? This is 2 Corinthians 10 and 12 says, for we dare not make ourselves of the number, or compare ourselves with some that commend themselves, but they measuring themselves by themselves and comparing themselves among themselves are not wise. So yeah, we're not supposed to be comparing amongst ourselves. Or, you know, this brother is not this, it's not that, but I'm like this, I'm like that, he needs to be like this. No, man, that's the wrong spirit to be in. Yeah, you do want to make sure that everybody is making their calling election sure, especially if they're among us, they're part of us. Hey, well, you got to do this work. You got to labor. Is this brother going out consistently? Is he doing shows consistently? Is he charitable? You know, does a brother come around? Does a brother take heed to order? You know, all these things. If all the boxes are being checked, then okay, you just focus on doing this work. You know? But we don't dare to make ourselves on them. Like we call ourselves, we see 144 all the time. Like even in the midst of the lesson, I called it out. Car pulled up, 144, you know. we see a lot of things, a lot of spiritual signs that we probably are those men, but us personally within our hearts, we dare not declare ourselves, I am the elect. It's good to get in the habit of comparing, I'm not comparing, but of carrying yourself as your elect, because as elect, you're not supposed to, really be out here trying to commit sins like that. Okay? You do the best you can. And, brothers see chariots and stuff like that, but when we do videos and we upload videos on chariots, I don't want to get the wrong message out that we're being boasting. We're just saying, hey, yeah, we are the elect. When we upload videos of the chariots, it's to show that, hey, it's to encourage of hope. And in the midst of all the hell that you catch, it's really, it's meant, when we share things like that, it's meant to be a faith boost. Because the scriptures talk about the description of the chariots, and things that we would see in the last days. So, me personally, if you see me upload a video on the chariot, Salaki, if it comes across that I'm boasting, declaring myself of that number, because that's not the case at all. It's just really just upload faith boost. But not everybody's meant to see everything as well. So, brothers, use caution of what you do upload. Because sometimes the chariot might not want the whole world to see what you just saw. It's just for you or whatever brothers that's with you in that moment. And so you have to use discernment on that matter as well. You don't want to be so quick to pull your phone out all the time to catch, chariots on camera. Because there's been times where I saw some and Spirit told me out of respect, now don't pull your phone out. Just go ahead and just enjoy that sight. And then if you want to, share a testimony verbally about it, then so be it. But it has to be in a manner of uplifting the body as a form of faith boost. Okay? So a lot of times the Lord, you might be vexed or going through something in your personal life, and you just kind of needed a lot of morale boost. So the Lord might just show you that. Or he might show you 144 when you're in a heavy spirit of Satan fucking with you mentally, and you got that doubt demon kicking in. And he may have a car cut you off with the license plate number on there. And that's just for you, Because brothers see that number all the time. I done seen it probably like 3 or 4 or 5 times a day. But am I taking a picture and posting it on YouTube for everybody to see? Say, look at me, I must be elect. No, that's the wrong spirit to be in. And the minute you do some bullshit like that, then that means the Lord going to step in and he'll take that from you. Okay? It says, but they measuring themselves by themselves and comparing themselves among themselves are not wise. It's not a wise thing to do. This brother didn't do, 12 lessons this week. He must be slacking. That's not the right spirit to be in. Did the brother do lessons? Did the brother's doing shows? Did the brother come out week in, week out? Is he consistently showing up? It says, verse 13, it says, but we will not boast of things without our measure, but according to the measure of the rule which Yahweh had distributed to us, a measure to reach even unto you. So Yahweh B'Shem Yahushai has delivered a measure of works and things that must be accomplished for each individual brother. Now the order is out, on so many shows that you need to do per week if you want to call yourself a great millstone, and you have to be vetted. You have to go through being tried and refined. You can't just make a channel and just put GMS on it and then just all of a sudden say you're a member because you decided to teach. No, you got to be tried. At a minimum, the longest I've seen, the quickest I've seen anyone be tried is at a minimum. Bare minimum is a year of just on the other side of the line, just learning, pulling precepts, taking notes, reading. You're not about to just in 1 week say, I'm going to go out and teach. And you teach for about a month and you wouldn't make yourself a garment, and all of a sudden you got a channel and on your handle you put Great Millstone on it. No. Because that's even being in the wrong spirit, like we're reading about, declaring yourself of that number. It don't work like that, man. You got to be tried and proven. Okay? But the brothers that have been tried and proven and they're with you, you want to give them the benefit of the doubt that, those brothers got your back because they've gone through a certain level of trying. Now, if they end up having a Judas spirit, then there's really nothing you can do to try to find out if that Judas spirit is existing prior to the Lord revealing it to you. You know, but you don't want to kind of be pointing a finger or looking at brothers with a side eye that, hey, I don't know if you want to elect, I think you on some bullshit. You know, constantly on that paranoia energy, it'll consume you. Okay? It says, for we stretch not ourselves beyond our measure, as though we reach not unto you, for we are come as far as to you also in preaching the gospel of Amashiach, not boasting of the things without our measure, that is, of other men's labors, but having hope, when your faith is increased, that we shall be enlarged by you according to our rule abundantly. Okay? So we all pray for excellence, you know? But the excellence that you do got, you never want to be in a spirit of boasting about it. Okay? And you don't want to measure that against another brother's excellence, you know? Some brother might have views on his channel, probably got thousands of thousands. And then one brother doing lessons, he might get like 5 views, you know? And he doing consistently 4 or 5 videos a week, and every single video 1, 2, 3 views. You know, you meanwhile on your channel, on the live stream, you got hundreds of thousands and stuff like that. Well, why you don't got no views on your channel, bro? You know, you must not be a man. That's nigga shit, man. And that's that energy that, you know, these other camps like Sakari and Genesis, well, now they call themselves TGC Ministries or some weird shit. IUIC, they're all about the number stuff, and they constantly compare of how many men is looking at them as, and they put that in stone as cement of validation whether or not they're a men of the Lord based off the numbers. And that's not what this thing is about. Okay, verse 16 says, to preach the gospel and to regions beyond you, and not to boast in another man's line of things made ready to our hand. Okay. This is Exodus 20 and 16. It says, thou shalt not bear false witness against thy neighbor. We always got to remember this too. You know, you don't want to assume what's going on in another brother's walk. If you're curious about something or you have worries or concern, then just ask the brother, you know. But don't just say, hey, this is what it is. Because you may not necessarily always be right about it. And you don't want to find yourself accidentally doing this scripture here, bearing false witness. That's not okay. You know? It's Philippians 2 and 12. It says, wherefore, my beloved, as ye have always obeyed, not as in my presence only, but now much more in my absence, work out your own salvation with fear and trembling. You know, so, you know, we're not really too concerned about what these other people, what they got going on in their lives. Like, you got this guy, he making videos now, the leader of one of these other camps, you know, complaining about his woman is bringing out dirty laundry on him and how, quote unquote, she was treated, you know, which we know she wasn't doing right for him to be snapping the way he was doing. But, you know, it's coming out, you know. And these guys, you know, whatever they got going on in their life, the Lord's going to reveal it. And they're going to go down. You know, but us, we're just working out our own salvation. We do so by going out to the highways and hedges, being brotherly, trying to, you know, be with the Akim. You know, being charitable, teaching this word consistently, studying, trying to make our calling and election sure. And that's that. Leave it at that, man. This is Proverbs 27:17. Iron sharpeneth iron, so a man sharpeneth the countenance of his friend. You know, so it's good to make sure each other is sharp. And we do this by uplifting, edifying each other, and helping us grow in this wisdom and this knowledge. And also, you know, being charitable. Okay, so this thing is about building each other up, not necessarily tearing each other down. You know, and allowing too much frustrations happening around you. You know, you start taking things out on the brothers that, you know, not even on that, of which you might suspect them to be on. Let's focus on building each other up, not tearing each other down. Because this thing is going to get more difficult. There's going to be more challenges coming up. A lot of trials and tribulations are ahead of us in our near futures, because we're in the time of Jacob's trouble. And Satan's doing what he is, like a roaring lion, seeking who he may devour and seeing who he can break up. But hey, this devil ain't got no power over Yahweh Shem Shai's church and his ministry, man. So us brothers are tight with one another. And we just do the best we can to maintain that at all times. We keep each other sharp, on point, and accept that, this brother is your brother until the Spirit reveals otherwise. If this brother's not, if he ain't right, hey, the betrayal is going to happen. There is a Judas spirit in every camp, and if you haven't experienced that whole Judas energy, you will. Us brothers in GMSKC, we done had men that backstabbed us and betrayed us, and they out, and they part of other groups. They done made videos on us and other shit, man. That's that Judas spirit. We've experienced it. So you're going to experience it. But there's nothing you can do to kind of like stop that from happening. So don't assume that a brother's on that. Going back to Luke 14, and we'll start at verse 28. It says, "For which of you intending to build a tower sitteth not down first and counteth the cost, whether ye have sufficient to finish it? Lest happily, after he hath laid the foundation and is not able to finish it, all that behold it begin to mock him, saying, This man began to build and was not able to finish. Or what king going to make war against another king sitteth not down first and consulteth whether he be able with 10,000 to meet him at the cometh against him with 20,000. Right? So we all have to count this cost, before we go into this truth. Before you want to take on the role of stepping up to be a prophet, which is the most honorable role, the honorable job you can have on this planet or in this universe, man. You got to count the costs, because once you step in this, you're gonna go through so much shit. But just know you're not going through so much shit by yourself. Other brothers is going through so much shit too. And just because a brother's walk isn't identical to yours, and he doesn't move identical to the way you would move or currently able to move, does not make that brother, less of a man or less diligent. So, we all want to finish this building that's being built right now. We're building the kingdom of Yahweh B'Shem Yahushai. And every brother's got a skill set, a talent in constructing that building. One brother might be a mason, another brother might deal with the steel, he might be a welder, another brother might deal with the carpentry, with the woodwork that's required. Some brother might be the architect, he might need to draw the blueprints. Another brother might be handling all the math, But just because the brother deals with the math and he's not the carpenter at the same time, does not make that brother less of a man. So Lord's will, this lesson is edifying. I'm going to go ahead and close out and give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, B'Shem Yahushai, B'Shem Rakakadash. Double honors to our apostles and elders, great millstone, Natasha's truth and will well. And salutations to you, hopefully pushing this truth and honesty and sincerity. Shalom.